Hi, my name is Jen Fogliston, and I am going to do a Think Aloud on Chapter 1 of Stone Fox by John Reynolds Gardner. As I begin reading the title page, I am immediately questioning what is the copyright of this text. The style of font appears old, not a modern font. As we are familiar with nowadays. It is almost reminiscent of a typewriter. And in following that line of thinking, typewriters are a nearly non-existent form of technology, which leads me to question the age of the story, and leads me to believe that it is an older story, something that has not been published in recent history. I'm immediately able to make predictions about who the story is about by looking at the illustration. I see a young boy and his dog. I'm able to infer from the illustration that the story must occur on a farm or in the country based on the wide open spaces, the presence of a field, a country road, and a farmhouse. As I beginning to read chapter 1, I'm immediately able to determine the importance of grandfather to this story. Not only is grandfather the title of chapter 1, but he's the focus of the text at this point. Um, I am able to process the importance of grandfather based on what I am reading. That Willie lives with his grandfather, that it is fun, especially when grandfather feels like playing, that they laugh so hard. I'm able to determine that grandfather is a key to this story. As I'm reading, I'm thinking about the phrase little Willie, and I'm able to visualize using that phrase a picture of Willie in my mind as a young boy, perhaps a 6, 7, or 8-year-old. And as I'm thinking about Willie being a young child, I'm remembering back to that first picture, that illustration I saw on the title page, which actually depicted a young boy, and I'm able to confirm my visualization regarding Willie at this point. I'm also thinking about the text as I make connections using my personal schema formed by stories provided by my father, who grew up on a potato farm in rural North Dakota. Because I have that background knowledge, I'm immediately able to connect with Willie and what the setting of this story is, what he may be seeing, and what he may be doing and expected to do on this potato farm with his grandfather. I'm thinking about the text on this page as I'm visualizing grandfather in my mind. Thus far, I have learned that grandfather likes to play. He likes to trick others. He laughs a lot. In my mind, to be honest with you, I'm smiling as I'm thinking this, is that I'm picturing a Santa. To be honest, grandfather in my mind conjures up a visual picture of someone with white hair, and as I'm thinking of this happy, laughing, joking gentleman, it brings to mind Santa, which forms this visual picture in my mind of who grandfather is. The text on pages 4 and 5 allows me to synthesize new information regarding grandfather. I'm thinking about the text as I'm learning that grandfather is not getting out of bed. He's not answering little Willie. And as I'm reading this portion of the text, I'm thinking, wait a second, grandfather is supposed to be happy, and he's supposed to be playing, and he's supposed to be this positive figure, and now he's not getting out of bed. And I'm inferring that based on my background knowledge of what it means to be sick, that grandfather is indeed sick, and I'm synthesizing this and trying to develop a new understanding of who grandfather is at this point of the story. What does this mean? I'm questioning, where does this leave Willie? What is going to happen next as this center figure in Willie's life is not well? As I read page 5, I had an opportunity to notice an adjustment in my reading pace. As Willie was running down the road and searching for Doc Smith and looking for help for his grandfather, I noticed as I was reading that my pace sped up as Willie was running along and these events were unfolding. It was almost as if I could sense the urgency of the situation, and as such, my pace adjusted as the story unfolded. Pages 6 and 7 provided me with an opportunity to make inferences again as to who grandfather is when he's well. I noticed the use of the word trick again on this page in the text and recalled back to the previous pages that the word trick was used in reference to grandfather several times, that he liked to play tricks. It must have been another trick. And my mind is thinking he must be well known as a trickster. What has he done for tricks? Who has he tricked? And I was able to connect and infer from the text here that he has tricked Doc Smith at some point. She is familiar with this capacity of grandfathers, so he must have tricked her at some point. The text also got me thinking. I was thinking that I'm able to connect with their assumptions here that something is wrong because grandfather wasn't going about his normal routine. Music, I was able to infer, was very important to grandfather. If he didn't sing or he didn't play his harmonica, something was seriously wrong. That shows me that music is very important, and I'm able to connect with that. If I love to read, and if I go to bed without taking that time to read at night, something is wrong. I don't give up that reading time very easily, and I'm able to infer that grandfather does not give up his music time easily, and therefore I'm able to make that connection with the character at this point. I also am thinking about the text and thinking within the text here as I question, why is he crying? What is causing grandfather this immense sadness? As they note that his beard was full of tears. Why is he feeling such despair at this point of the story? And will the answer to these questions lead me to why grandfather won't get out of bed? As I continue to read through the text, I once again am able to determine that grandfather is a hugely important figure in Willie's world. On this page, there are 2 references to grandfather made by Willie, and using the repetitive phrase, grandfather says, it leads me to infer that grandfather is indeed a focal point for Willie. He is the teacher in Willie's world. He is the one that is able to provide for Willie the structure and the foundation for his world, and as such, grandfather is extremely important. I'm also remembering back in the story at this point that there is no mention of parents in Willie's world. Willie lives with his grandfather, which leads me to believe and infer that grandfather is Willie's guardian, that there are no other adult figures in Willie's life. I'm also curious at this point why the doctor is asking questions. How is the crop this year, Willie? Do you owe anybody money? Every time Willie asks a question, she asks a question in return. Is she avoiding the issue? Is she trying to protect Willie? I'm making a variety of predictions about where this is going to go. Is she going to give Willie bad news that perhaps his grandfather is dying, or is she trying to distract Willie from the situation? I'm predicting this is not going to be happy news for Willie at this point. In the last portion of chapter 1, as I'm reading, I notice an opportunity right at the beginning of the text to practice fluent phrased reading and an opportunity to emphasize certain pieces of the text with the word nothing being italicized. That's just it, she said. There is nothing wrong with him. And that is exactly how I read it in my mind the first time I read the story, the chapter, pardon me. It's a perfect opportunity to work on fluent phrased reading. As I read further into page 10, I noticed another adjustment in my reading pace when Doc Breath took a deep breath and she began to explain what was going on with Grandpa. I did not want to miss anything. In fact, I reread that portion of the story in order to make sure that I fully understood the meaning, that I monitored my comprehension at that point, that I was not missing key details. This portion of the text also provided me an opportunity to infer that grandfather doesn't want to leave Willie. As Willie asks, but what about fishing and the rodeo and turkey dinners? Doesn't he want to do those things? After Doc says that he's just giving up. And I read on to learn that tears are rolling down grandfather's cheeks, and that leads me to infer that grandfather doesn't want to leave Willie, that he too enjoys these things. And I find myself at this point agreeing with the doctor as I analyze the text, that she is correct in saying that he probably doesn't want to leave Willie, but it's something that starts in the mind and the body just begins to give up. I'm able to synthesize at this point in the text that Willie is a determined little boy. I'm adding that new information to what I know about him as a child by reading his exact words at the end of the story. I'll find out what's wrong and make it better. You'll see, I'll make him want to live again. And I'm analyzing the text here because I have this idea that Willie is now a determined little boy and he's strong, and I'm wondering as I analyze the text why the author chose to use little and then is now creating this situation where I am synthesizing that Willie is in fact a strong little boy. Little and strength do not go together in my mind, and I'm wondering where this will lead. You know, is that where the word stone comes into play? Is Willie going to turn out to be the rock in this story? And truth be told, these questions and thinking processes that I'm going through as I'm reading are leading me to want to read further into Stone Fox.